Hello everyone and welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. Today I've got a powerful one for you. We have Anhelo The Painter. One look at this guy and I was like, man, this might be the best wheel commander. One, it's in Grixis colors. Two, you really only need 3 to 2 wheels to end someone once you've got your board state set up with a wheel deck. And this guy gets rid of half of that problem for you because he can copy your will spells. Additionally, if we're not copying the will spells, this guy can generate a ton of value just copying value spells. There is one hoop with Anhelo though. We need to have 2/2s on the board or this guy's just a brick. So let's go over what we have in the deck to make sure that never happens. Bloodghast. This one's really good because all we have to do is play a land and this guy can come right back to our graveyard to sacrifice again. Waste Not and Bone Miser. As long as we're discarding cards, we're getting value with these guys. Additionally, we can create 2/2 black zombies off of him and Bone Miser. So really useful and it's going to set off that prerequisite. Chasm Skulker, not only are we going to make this guy massive, but once he gets massive, we're going to go ahead and sack him to Anhelo to create a board state out of nowhere. Gutter Bones, this one, we can go ahead and bring him back from the graveyard. That's what this deck is really good at, right? Because a wheel deck throws half the shit into the graveyard. Well, half the shit in our graveyard, we're going to be able to bring back so Anhelo can go ahead and use his casualty ability. Talrand Sky Summoner. Simple. We're going to go ahead and cast instant and sorceries, and whenever we do, we'll create a 2/2 blue drake that we can then sacrifice. Jadar Ghoul Caller of Nephalia. As long as this guy's on the board, we will have no issues getting that 2/2 zombie because we're going to go ahead and create one with Decayed, sacrifice it, and then next turn we'll just create another one. He's perfect. Dogged Detective. This guy's almost as good as Bloodghast because everybody's going to be trying to draw more than 2 cards per turn. So the likelihood that this guy gets back onto the battlefield before your turn cycle's over is pretty high. Blood-Soaked Champion. Another card that we can just bring back from our graveyard to the battlefield. Empty the Pits. I included this card in the category because technically it does create 2/2s and you can then sacrifice those 2/2s for the casualty ability. But let's be honest, this card can end the game in this deck. It's got Delve and we're playing Wheels. So we can get rid of every single card in our graveyard to help cast for X. And essentially this is just going to be a single X pip because our commander's going to copy it. So if we make X equal to, let's say 4, we're going to create 8. It's pretty good. Last but not least, we have Cult Conscript, another card that we can, you guessed it, bring back from our graveyard to the battlefield with little effort. Alright guys, let's get to the nasty stuff. We have Whispering Madness. This card is really good because basically it becomes an enchantment that attaches to your creature after you play it. That's the best way I know how to explain Cypher. So if we go ahead and copy it, I'm pretty sure we get 2 Cypher triggers. So that's going to mean whenever we attack and deal combat damage, we're going to wheel and then wheel again. On top of the first time we cast it, which is going to wheel and then wheel again because we copied it with our commander. All we have to do is play this and then connect and our opponents are going to die that turn. As long as we have, something that deals damage whenever people discard cards or draw cards, obviously. Next up, we have our standard stuff. Reforge the Soul, Dark Deal, Jace's Archivist. Notably, this one's really good because it sticks around, right? Windfall, Rail the Everwise. This one's really good because it's just going to make sure we're drawing a lot of cards. Go ahead, discard your hand, draw cards because you wheeled, and then draw more cards, right? It's going to make it to where we're almost guaranteed to draw into another wheel card, which is kind of what you want to do with the deck, right? Chain wheels together and everybody dies. Baylor, this guy's an all-star in the deck because one, people are going to have pretty full hands because we're going to be wheeling often. So when Baylor deals damage to target opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand, that's going to be a pretty big number. Additionally, when Baylor makes opponent draw 3 cards and discard 3 cards, that opponent is probably going to be taking a lot of damage. And then the other one's just icing on the cake, but we'll take 2 out of 3 that are broken. Echo of Eons. This one's really good because it ends up in our graveyard half the time, so we're not paying 6 mana for it. We're only playing that 3. And if we get stuck and we need to draw cards, it's better to have it than not. Alright, let's get into how we're going to kill our opponents in one turn. We have Sheoldred the Apocalypse. Really broken. I don't think anybody's surprised she makes the list. Nekusar the Mindraiser. You could swap this out for the commander, but I honestly think Anhelo's better. This guy's going to force our opponents to draw cards and deal damage to them when they do. Migrim. This one's simple. Whenever someone discards a card, they're going to deal 2 damage to that player. Liliana's Caress, same exact thing. Fate Unraveler, whenever they draw a card, they're going to take a damage. We then have Keterek Parasite, again, whenever they're drawing cards, they're going to take another damage. Fel Spectre, whenever they discard a card, they're going to lose 2 life. Obnixilis is a fun one because we can honestly use that on our own creatures to go ahead and draw 2 cards, or we can just take out someone's creatures. Our opponent has to draw 2 cards, which can notably kill them in a niche scenario. And also, whenever someone draws a card, he's going to deal 1 damage to that player. Blood Chief's Ascension. This is just Shieldred with extra steps, so it's really good in the deck. Notably, it does come down pretty early too. Lastly, we have the Locust God. Now, I could have put a Psychosis Crawler in the deck, but I really liked the thought of creating tokens, just in case we needed blockers to protect our life total. Alright guys, let's take a look at the core of the deck, the things that just boost our strategy and make things more consistent. We have Lightning Greaves. People are going to be gunning for our commander, obviously. He's a house, so why wouldn't they? Tegrid, God of Frights. Now, some people might judge me for putting this in the deck, but this deck is not for a good time. I mean, we're playing wheels and discard effects anyway, so they kind of know what they're getting into. When someone pulls up a Nekusar, they're not trying to have a good time. Kess, Dissident Mage. We're going to be discarding a lot of our spells, so it's going to be really useful to play those spells from the graveyard. Dothy, Voidwalker. I did look it up, and I did make sure discard effects still work even though you exile them. So he's perfect in the deck, and we'll have a choice to cast a lot of cards that our opponents discard. Containment Construct. This is just really useful to make sure we don't discard anything that we need to cast. Because when you copy a will spell, you're going to draw, and then discard, and then draw again. You could discard something pretty useful, but with this guy on the field, it'll make sure we get access to all the cards we need. Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant. This is basically going to double up on our commander's ability because it's going to double our instant and sorcery spells. Additionally, it's going to screw our opponents a little bit, which is what we're doing all game anyway. Entomb. This card's really good in the deck because we can just throw Bloodghast in the graveyard, or whatever card we need, right? Gamble, again, we don't really care if we tutor up a Bloodghast and then have to then discard Bloodghast into our graveyard, because that's where we wanted him anyway. Diabolic Intent, we're creating a lot of sacrifice fodder, so it's going to be really easy to sacrifice a 2/2 and go ahead and tutor up the best card in our deck. Probably Whispering Madness if you have a discard payoff on the field, or Shieldred if you have a wheel in your hand. It's just whichever one you need. We have Mystical Tutor for our final tutor, and lastly, we have Underworld Breach. Again, we're discarding a lot of stuff, so if we have something go into the graveyard that we need later, this card's just going to ensure that we can cast it still. Alright guys, let's cover the ramp of the deck. We have Stormkiln Artist. Again, you guys aren't surprised this guy's here. He's going to be amazing in the deck. Next up, Big Score. Maybe a little iffy one, but hear me out. If we copy this with our commander, not only are we going to draw several cards, but we're going to create 4 treasure tokens, which is pretty valuable. Treasure Map. Again, another one I could see people being like, I don't know, but hear me out. We get the Scry. It's really good early, and it turns into a land whenever it gives us those 3 treasure tokens, which is really useful. Primal Amulet. This one's going to be really good and not hard to flip at all, right? Notably, it's only on cast, so if we copy a sorcery spell, it's not going to count, but still, most of the deck is instant or sorcery cards, so we're going to flip this really easy, and after we flip it, we're going to go ahead and copy more sorcery cards. Lastly, we are running all 4 Signets in the deck and Soul Ring, just because they're super efficient and we don't have access to green, so it is what it is. Let's cover the card advantage, because yes, there is card advantage that does not wheel us. We have Jessica's Will. It's just too efficient and too good for what it does. Dig Through Time. Again, this has Delve on it, so we can go ahead and not only cast this for 2, but we can copy it with our commander also. So we can look at the top 14 cards and choose cards out of them. This one will get us to what we need and can possibly lead us to win the game. Faithless Looting. It's going to end up in our graveyard and we can flash it back to draw cards. Really good in a pinch, and this card has saved me a lot. Lastly, we have Archmage. This guy's pretty insane because all we're trying to do is copy and cast instant and sorcery spells, and we're just going to draw cards when we do that. Alright guys, let's finish it up with removal, and let me tell you, the removal's pretty messed up, so let's get into it. Archfiend of Ifnir. This guy is an overperformer if ever I've seen one. In every wheel deck I've built, this guy can wipe the board, and if he doesn't, I've seen him take out Avacyn over 2 turns just because the 1/1 counters stick around. Cyclonic Rift. If you guys don't know, this card's insane in wheel decks because here's what you do. You pass your turn, people look at you like, what the fuck you got in your hand? And then you just go ahead and wait, and right at the instep of the person right before your turn, you're going to cast this bouncing everything to their hand. And then on your turn, you're going to go ahead and wheel, and they have to discard all of it. And then they're going to take a ton of damage, and you will probably win the game if you have one of those discard payoffs like Sheldred on the battlefield. It's insane, and they lose their minds every time it happens. It's so funny. We are also playing River's Rebuke, because hear me out, guys. Our commander can copy this. So while it's not instant and we can't be that funny with it, we can still bounce 2 people's boards completely. Notably, token strategies and treasure strategies are going to be screwed off of this because they're just not going to exist anymore. An offer you can't refuse. This is just a really easy, affordable counterspell. Glen Elendra Archmage. It's really good to have cards that stick on the battlefield in this deck because we're going to be wheeling stuff away constantly. So you don't really want to hold removal in your hand because you're probably just going to wheel it away, right? Feed the Swarm, removal, counterspell, really easy removal, Chaos Warp, again, really easy removal, and then Siren Storm Tamer. For the same reason, Glen Elendra is in the deck. Alright guys, let me leave you with one last thing. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching the video. I really liked building the deck. Let me know in the comment section below if you think Anhelo is probably the best wheel deck now. I'm really curious to hear your opinion on that. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Hello everyone.